fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
What'd you get them on?
Some guy told me to try Tsunami sand eel.
How's it work?
Pretty good.
That's great, isn't it? Bumped into Nick Cicero on the beach. Nick, of course, he works at Tsunami. Tsunami Tackle, Bimini Bay Outfitters. In fact, Nick and Jerry Gomber, two guys from Jersey, they developed that Tsunami sand eel. So it sort of sounds like a commercial, but it works. That's the bottom line. These two originators, Jerry and Nick, the Tsunami Saltex, the Saltex rods, Saltex reels, those are the guys. So the trying out phase, the proving grounds along the Jersey shore. Now, I'm Jim Hutchinson with the New Jersey, Delaware Bay edition of the Fisherman magazine. I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet this week. I haven't changed my clothes in days. The wife is loving that. I go to bed exhausted every night, and I immediately wake up without an alarm around 4 a.m. If I wasn't so old, I'd probably work the night shift to get some of these stripers being up as much as I am. But the fact of the matter is, most of the folks that I've talked to, the night bite out front really hasn't been anything to really sensationalize. Most of the guys that I know that are doing anything at night, it's throughout the state of New Jersey, Monmouth, Ocean, Atlantic, and Cape May County. They're working in the back bays. And don't forget, you only have a little bit more time through the end of this year to really target striped bass in the back bays. As of January 1st, you can't. But there are plenty of bass in those rivers and in those back bays right now. In fact, if you can get out along the sedges, if your boat's still in the water, outgoing tide, top of the tide, just as it's turning out along some of those sedges and creek mouths, it's still working with the plastics. And of course, if you can find yourself a nice dock at night under the lights. But out front, of course, especially along the beaches, which is where I'm spending a lot of time, as much time as possible, it's all about that sand eel bite for the most part. The bass are in a frenzy for the most part on those sand eels. Now, I did stumble into some pods of bunker middle of this week, Wednesday, and those snow flurries, but still, it's the sand eel bite. And out front, those Tsunami sand eel imitations are doing a fairly good job of mimicking those sand eels that are in the wash. Some of them are small, so you're going with some of those smaller 6-inch Tsunami sand eels. Other times they're a little bit bigger, as is the case shared by Nick Konicheski in the wash this week. Those are some significant size sand eels. Now, on Wednesday morning, I heard from Jerry Fabiano. He shared this fish, a photo of a good fish that was taken on a 7-inch Tsunami sand eel somewhere along the stretch in Ocean County. I say good fish because so many of the fish we've been taking, I talked to Greg Hewitt, who came down from Belmar working the Southern Ocean County stretch this week, and he had 4 doubleheaders in the surf to start the week. I had a doubleheader. I like to say that I had 44 inches of striped bass, when in actuality, I had 22 inches. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at a fish like Jerry's, there are some good fish that are into that slot range, and I would expect there's some bigger fish in the 40-inch range as well. The Black Cloud himself, I was up on the beach. Tuesday was good. Anybody you talk to between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. in different pockets, the fishing was good. I showed up on Wednesday in a stretch where I thought it was going to be perfect. The conditions were good. The snow was falling. The sky was overcast. Nothing doing. I imagine when I left the beach, things happened. But that's the way it is with this fall run. I did bump into a neighbor on the way back, and he said, it's the black teasers, it's the blacktails. So maybe there's that. There are a couple of things to keep in mind, a couple of takeaways that I've found personally in working on this fall stretch and also in talking to others. First of all, those smaller plastics, like I mentioned, are harder to cast. They don't go as far. And in the wind, you're going to have difficulty throwing those lighter sand eel imitations. The fly guys will tell you the same thing. That's why some of the heavier rigged plastics are accounting for some fish as well. The Bill Hurleys, the rigged plastics that way. I'm hearing great reports on the Savage sand eels as well. And sometimes that's why the metal works so well, because you can get a little bit more casting distance. Again, if you're out with some buddies, Somebody's going to be throwing the tins, somebody's going to be throwing the smaller plastics. You find the color that matches and everybody piles on that. Of course, the Avas, the Charlie Graves, but these are only truly effective, I've found, as long as you have that teaser out front. Whether you're rigging on a dropper in your leader, tying a separate leadered teaser on that same barrel swivel where your main teaser is. I know Shelly Karras has talked about that in the past, because sometimes he's able to clip that if there's bass out front, way out beyond the breakers, if they're feeding on those bunkers. So that's another way. Of course, you can also pick up those pre-rigged teasers in the local tackle shops along the beach, especially where you're buying those teasers, those flies, those Sandiel imitations. Also, vary your retrieve until you know what's working best. I talked to Frankie at Grumpy's Tackle in Seaside this week. He said, quote, "Let the fish tell you what they want and how they want it. Sometimes it's slow in the water column. Other times it's just a little jiggling on the bottom like you're fluke fishing." And that's something I found out too. You know, sometimes you're just kind of jiggling that Sandiel imitation or that metal. And of course, on the Avas, you have the green tails or the black tails or the white tails, and some of those cod jigs that I've mentioned, I'll rig them with a Sandiel imitation at the end and just kind of jiggle it sometimes. Many folks in the shops along the coast are saying the same thing. If you're dead sticking with clam or bunker, fine. But if you're casting and not finding the bites, move. It could be right there next to you. The guy next to you could be on a pocket of fish and you're not getting anything. I set up about 100 feet away from some friends the other day. I didn't want to jump on them because I saw they had bent rods, but it was that little distance away that meant all the difference. So sometimes you got to stick and move. If you're not having action in one place, move. Walk along the beach if you're not in a buggy. And that's also the joy of finding your own fish sometimes, is once you get on that fish and then that buggy comes by when you've got a bent rod and suddenly you have new friends. Another thing in the surf is that the action is obviously a little bit better around the timing of the higher water, often lower light. With the stiff westerlies this past weekend and the low tide around dawn, things were a little bit difficult for the surf action, especially on Sunday morning, because there just wasn't enough water in those troughs. I can tell you that from personal experience, because on Sunday morning I met with the folks from Berkeley Striper Club outside of Island Beach State Park in the pre-dawn hours for a little tagging expedition with John Tiedemann, Keith Dunton, and the crew from Monmouth University. We masked up, hit the buggy trail, myself with Berkeley President John Krafchek. We had about a dozen folks out along the beach for the Berkeley Striped Bass Tagging Contest, which also incorporated Monmouth University's acoustic tagging project. So if you saw a mass of folks in one spot at Island Beach State Park this past Sunday, it wasn't because we were all on fish. We were doing the tagging project. Of course, not blitz conditions, but we still ended up with about a half dozen specimens with that acoustic tag. To tell you more about this incredible tagging project, here's John Tiedemann himself from somewhere out along Island Beach State Park.
This is one of a newer project in our Stripers for the Future campaign that I started in 2011, and right now what we're doing is we're implanting acoustic transmitter tags in the stripers off the beach at Island Beach State Park. Two years ago we did half a dozen fish in Sandy Hook Bay, and we've worked with the Berkeley Striper Club over the years, so now we're doing fish here on Island Beach State Park in the surf. And these acoustic transmitter tags will, each tag has an individual signal that it gives out, so the fish itself is identifiable by the signal, and anytime it swims by an acoustic receiver in the wild, it pings. So we're able to track the fish, not in real time, but over a long period of time in terms of their movements. And scientists have been using this acoustic transmitter tagging for a while, so not only our receivers, but receivers from other studies are out along the North Atlantic and Mid-Atlantic coast. And so over time we'll be able to follow the movements of these fish. Right now it's late fall, so these fish will probably head to an overwintering area, but these tags last for quite a while, so then we'll see in the spring if they show up on a spawning ground, what spawning ground perhaps they show up, and then with the spring movement, where they head. And over time, if we do enough fish, we'll also start to sort out, like some studies have sorted out, whether the fish are migrators or whether they're resident fish. So it can give us a lot of information based on the transit back and forth through areas that have the receivers. We did a project with the club for 2 years, doing fin clips in the fall, and Keith does the fin clip every time Dr. Dunton puts a transmitter in, and then that'll be analyzed for DNA, so we can actually isolate the DNA, and then that'll tell us basically the place of birth, the origin of the fish, whether it's a Chesapeake fish, whether it's a Hudson fish, whether it's Albemarle, Pamlico, Roanoke River fish. So, so that's a good tool to tell us the origin of the fish. First DNA study where we did fin clips for 2 years, 2017 and 2018, the geneticist that I work with at school, Dr. Megan Pfeiffer-Rixey, is just finishing up the 2018 data. So as scientists, we publish in scientific journals, but my idea is always to use the Fisherman magazine too as an outlet for the information. So I did put a little bit about this in my last article, but once we get the complete data set, yeah, we'll disseminate that to the angling public too, and not only through print, but as the shows spark up again after COVID, I'll go speak at the shows, and I do a lot of speaking at the club meetings. So really our whole idea with this campaign is to get the biological information on the life history of these fish, and some of the new information that this acoustic work and this DNA work is telling us out to anglers, so they better understand all about their favorite fish, which is the striper.
Now, we are still getting some good reports from up in the northern region, the Monmouth County area, North Jersey, and finding some bass along the south shore of Long Island as well. So most of those guys are boating. The guys coming out of Highlands are getting out and doing that jigging bite. That's still good news for the rest of the state as well, especially as you get into Atlantic and Cape May County, as this run should continue through the month of December. And the farther you go down into Cape May in Delaware, you'll probably have that action into January as well. Trolling those Niner rigs, the umbrellas with the tubes or shads, guys heading out in a boat, that's pretty much the way to do it. And of course, you've also got the jigging opportunities. Make sure you take those Avas. And again, those Tsunamis are great too. If you're set up, I remember years ago setting up on the Brant Beach lump when it was there, then it was gone, now it's back again. But just drop in a reel, drop those jigs or those sand eel invitations to the bottom, bring them up. There have also been some continued reports on the black sea bass and the tog for a lot of the head boats that are sailing out of ports along the Jersey coast. The Big Mohawk out of Belmar, she got on some tog. She continues to scratch away at the tog. From our reports this week at thefisherman.com, I think there's plenty of optimism from folks for the rest of December as things kind of chilled off here close to shore. That jetty action, that Point Pleasant Canal action with the tog, that's starting to slow down. So maybe those tog are starting to move into the inshore wrecks. Should be beneficial for the tog fishery through the month of December. There have been some jumbo sea bass too on the head boats that are running offshore. On those 18-hour sea bass trips, for example, on the Big Jamaica out of Manasquan, porgies as well in the mix on some of these trips, and not just out of Manasquan or Monmouth or Ocean County, but we're finding out that some of those porgies are down into Cape May as well. They've been spicing up the biscuit box on some trips on Cape Queen charters, for example, going back a couple of weeks. So if you're getting some of those bigger trips together going off for black sea bass, you can expect to get some porgies in the mix as well. Tasty option. Hanukkah starts this week, and we're under 3 weeks at this point, believe it or not, until Christmas as well. I have a holiday gift idea or two to come up, but first let's check in with my friend George, the Pocono Outdoors guy.
Well, hey, thanks, Jim. You know, it's a cold, windy day here, but the guys are still out getting fish, enjoying this cold weather. And you know who's enjoying that? The trout guys. I think all the trout guys checked in this week. We got a few things here to show you and a couple techniques to share. I had good friend Eric Goodstall, our local Pocono guru with trout, checked in with some giant trophy brown trout on the fly. And I want to see if I can get you guys next week a couple of the flies that he's using to get these things. But he's been doing really well on the fly in these small Pocono streams. Lots of cold water is making those browns really turn on. Now also, a good friend Rich Bates checked in he was on the upper Delaware, and he was tossing a gold spoon and getting into some of these brown trout as well. Now this technique was really good. Rich told me he got 2 browns, 2 rainbows, and 3 smallmouth all with the same lure. I'll take that kind of a score any day, so great work, Rich. Now I also want to touch our friend from New Jersey, Justin Lerner. He was out getting some giant brook trout in New Jersey. Now he was using the plugs. You know, we've been talking about jerkbaits and plugs for some time now. Great fall presentation, guys, so don't forget to use that. Now, while we were mentioning the Delaware a minute ago, I got to touch base with you guys. We had 8-year-old Aiden Downs out with his pop Brian, and they were on the upper Delaware tossing some shad for some resident stripers. Well, Aiden hooked into a 10-pound channel cat, and what a trophy. I mean, for a little guy like that, he brought it all in himself. That's great work there, Aiden. So good stuff out there, guys. Lots of fish despite the cold. Now the weekend looks like it might be a little bit of wet, so we got to watch that, but keep an eye on the weather. Get out and get on them. From Pennsylvania, I'm George, your Pocono Outdoors guy.
One of the more popular and unique gift items of the last couple of years is down in Atlantic County out of Riptide Bait and Tackle. The beached cars of Brigantine, 12 of the finest displays of Guggenism as you'll find anywhere. Andy at Riptide literally has dozens and dozens of primo pics of cars stuck in the sand in Brigantine. He chose the 12 best for the 12 months of 2021. Stop in to see Andy at Riptide Bait and Tackle. Get that calendar of beached cars for 2021. You also have that gift subscription idea from the Fisherman magazine going on right now. You have that special offer. We have kicked it off for the holiday season at thefisherman.com. Typically our subscription is $29.95 for the whole year. You can get it for $19.95 now through December. If you want to get 2 years, it's just $38. This is good for subscribers, renewing subscribers, new subscribers, and again, it makes a great holiday gift. All the perks that come from being a member of the Fisherman magazine, including that digital access. Now, that December edition of the Fisherman magazine is out, of course. It's our annual holiday gift guide, a beautiful cover from Savio Missy. But inside that holiday gift guide, you will find in the glossy section a whole host of items that you might want to pick up for a loved one, for a friend, or for yourself this holiday season. Finally, in this season of blessings, I have to give thanks to a man named George Brown, who has become a remarkable advocate of beach access over the last couple of years. Some yahoos in Brick Township decided that on their beachfront property, they were going to put up dune fence on the beach as if they owned it. George was active again, and it's my understanding from the township of Brick that these folks are enjoying a $2,000 daily fine because they decided, in the spirit of the holidays, the beach belonged to them. The beach belongs to everybody, especially at the high tide line, and that's where you want to be this week. It seems like the tides and the first light in the morning are shaping up. Just keep an eye on the weather forecast coming up because that's also a key. It looks like some south winds in our forecast. Never my favorite, but again, we had that west wind over the weekend, which I love. Didn't help us much with low water. Get out there, get it done. I'll see you on the beach, and I'll see you again right here next week at thefisherman.com.
Steigercraft boats, built by people who fish our waters. Serious English choose Steigercraft for their 40 years of boat building experience right here in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. Visit steigercraft.com for a dealer near you.